I know I normally do videos on monsters, but with the recent D&D movie out and chatting Happy and Horse over on the Dopes and Dragons channel, I feel like I need to share the love for this fan favourite, beautiful bald bookworm. The Great Mordenkainen. Mordenkainen is only mentioned in relation to his arcane seal spell within the Honor Among Thieves movie. But still. Mordenkainen was born in 509 CY, or Common Year, on the wild coast of the Flanness region. Mordenkainen comes from the world of Orth on the Greyhawk campaign setting, or Earth. And that's Earth with an O, not E, if you get me. I'm just going to clear this up now that the name of the planet in the Greyhawk setting is pronounced Earth, although some say Orth. And apparently they're not wrong. He was first introduced into the game way back in 1973. And this is kind of odd because normally I would say that a monster appeared in this year in this book and was inspired or was tied to this, that, or the other thing. But Mordenkainen was introduced by Gary Gygax himself. In 1972, Gary Gygax had created his Greyhawk setting and was playing his DM for months and months, and at this point, frankly, he got a bit burnt out. He wanted to shake things up a bit, so he asked Rob Kuntz, confirmed that it is Kuntz, not Kuntz, who was a player, to instead DM a campaign so Gary could stretch his legs. Gary created a few characters for the campaign. This is the first edition at this point, which was a meat grinder, to be honest, and it was fairly common to have a backup or 5 when you start a campaign. Anyway, Gary got to play in this first level wizard. At the time, he was into his Finnish mythology, particularly a publication called the Kalevala, which I believe are a collection of poems in a specific cadence that talk of mythic origins, which is not unlike Irish Shannon singing. It was in the Kalevala that Gary got his inspiration for his character's name, an amalgamation of Mordecai and Lemminkainen, so Mordenkainen. So it was in Rob Kuntz's campaign set in Caliburn that Mordenkainen and the adventuring party that would become the Citadel of Eight would be formed. You may hear me mention the Citadel of Eight, and you will definitely hear me mention the Circle of Eight, and the difference between those two are the Citadel of Eight are an adventuring party named for Mordenkainen's 8-towered obsidian home. This was made up of a group of players which included Gary Gygax when he created Mordenkainen, so it was a home game. Circle of Eight does include some members of the Citadel of Eight, but only the arcane spellcasters Bigby and Tensor. More on this later. Mordenkainen is described as having a constant skull, a Van Dyke goatee, bald head, and was supposedly 6'2" in height. A lot of people around that time were 6'2". Normally clad in blue or black, and was often seen wielding his 3-ringed staff. In older art, he had a thicker goatee and medium-length hair, but has kept everything shaved or tight since 591 Common Year. He appears much younger than what he actually is. Being a master of the arcane, he has no doubt crafted potions of longevity or other such spells to maintain his younger build and energy. He's quite stubborn and difficult to work with, apparently having a very short temperament for people who question him or interfere with his steady progress, or in general any steady progress. This is the nice way of saying he doesn't like it when he doesn't get what he wants, and can be a bit of a dick. He's known for being a little on the quiet side, thinking more than speaking, though when he speaks his words are heavy with consideration and authority. When he travels, Mordenkainen takes on the appearance of a ragged travelling merchant, so he can blend in with normal street folks. If you know a bit about Greyhawk setting, you know that Mordenkainen is a very prominent figure within it. He consulted with royalty, politicians, and powerful beings from mortal to immortal. And at this point you're probably wondering, what was he focused on? What are his goals? Well, Mordenkainen believes in balance, believing that absolute power will corrupt absolutely. And so after the Citadel of Eight disbanded, Mordenkainen established the Circle of Eight to maintain balance, boosting lower entities while foiling the machinations of the mighty. Mordenkainen, being chaotic neutral, has done as much good in the world as bad, not only striking a balance between law and chaos, but also good and evil. As such, sometimes the Circle of Eight must act in secret to keep their evil acts hidden from the wider world. A little bit here on the Circle of Eight, it's made of 9 members. It was formed by Mordenkainen and his former foe, now apprentice, Bigby. Point for each name you recognise here. Bigby, Bucknard, Dromage, Leomund, Nystel, Otto, Rari, and Tenster. Bigby you will know from Bigby's magical digit spells such as Bigby's Hand, Bigby's Dexterous Digits, Bigby's Fantastic Fencers, Bigby's Strangling Grip, and I Friggin' love this one. Bigby's most excellent force sculpture. There was Bucknard, who is most well known for his namesake magic item, Bucknard's Everfull Purse. Dromage, famous for Dromage's instant summon spells. Leomund of Leomund's Tiny Hut fame. Nystel of Nystel's Magic Aura. Otto of Otto's Irresistible Dance. Rari of Rari's Telepathic Bond. Tensor of Tensor's Floating Disc. There are stories of an unnamed original member who left to travel across the plains in secret, who was then replaced by Tensor, but I can't find anything as concrete as I want on that tidbit, so I can't be sure. These wizards all have a plethora of spells, and each very powerful in their schools of magic. The lowest level among them was level 17, more than powerful enough to handle any world-ending event. And that's not to mention Mordenkainen himself. He's now an Archmage and is beyond 20th level in Wizard. Spoilers ahead for the module Die Vecna Die, but the Circle of 8 did fall victim to the Whispered One. The module opens with your players using the stat sheets of some of the Circle of 8 defending themselves from Vecna, only to finally perish. Then the game starts with their actual characters. This apparently is canon, and as a result the Circle of 8 were cloned by Mordenkainen and restored to their power after some wibbly-wobbly tragic magic. And tragic magic isn't a bad name for necromancy, you know. So beyond the Greyhawk stories and such, Mordenkainen got his own adventure in 1984. Mordenkainen's Fantastic Adventure. This wasn't such a special adventure or anything. Even Gary himself called it a hack-and-slash adventure, but the thing most people found unique about it is that it's the only official publication at that point to contain Mordenkainen's stat block. In more recent times, there is a stat block made up for Mordenkainen in Curse of Strahd, but wait till you hear the next part. It isn't actually the correct stat block. Gary Gygax never revealed his actual stats to most of his character sheets. It was like a private, personal thing for him and his DMs or friends alone. And so any stats you actually see out there in the wild of a statted Mordenkainen, just know they aren't the official stats from Gary's sheet. In 1992, From the Ashes, the Greyhawk box set had Mordenkainen referenced, but now he was a super high level, much more powerful than he was in his Fantastic Adventure. This was where he began to move his pursuit of balance beyond the Flyness region. Mordenkainen began showing up in more and more adventures and stories by authors specifically writing for the Greyhawk setting, or campaign. This in turn is where it was eventually decided that Mordenkainen had gained the ability in his pursuits of amassing greater magic to be able to plane hop. Mordenkainen has shown up in the Forgotten Realms, even did a stint in Barovia, but none more unusual than when he kept showing up in our world, like our reality, to hang out with the great and powerful Elminster Olmar, to sip fizzy drinks and shoot the breeze in Ed Greenwood's kitchen. Here we see Elminster and Mordenkainen sat, talking about their day-to-day, while Ed hides in a suit of armour. This was part of a series known as The Wizards 3, the first of which is published in Dragon Magazine 185. These are an interesting read that chronicle the events of lore that happened in each respective mage's reality. It's a great way to keep us readers aware of both and what timeline they now sit on. And I will mention that these are considered semi-canonical and also feature Dalamar of the Dragonlance setting from time to time. And more recently, Mordenkainen and Elminster met up in 2016 in the Death Masks book written by Ed Greenwood. So besides his traversing of the plains and rubbing elbows with powerful beings and politicians, in his spare time he does a lot of research or experimentation and crafting of new means. He will periodically transport part of his tower to Avernus to study the effects the Hells have on arcane magic. This is where you can encounter him if you play through the Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus, that module. Let's talk a little bit about his spells. He's most well known for his spell Mordenkainen's Magnificent Mansion, Mordenkainen's Arcane Seal, and also Mordenkainen's Faithful Hound. These are great spells, truly, but his lesser known range from the horrific to the downright hilarious. First, Mordenkainen's Disjunction. This 9th level spell would render magic items completely inert, cancelling their ability, disseminating them down to their basic components. What's more, this spell would affect other magical effects such as spells or magical areas. Only legendary items could withstand the brunt of this spell, and even then, they could succumb to it. Some legendary artifacts had some of their powers stripped or removed entirely. This spell could be imbued upon artifact level items, so they could cast it, and this is shown in the Helm of Disjunction, which was crafted by Mordenkainen and is in the D&D movie. This has been described as an incredibly Gygaxian spell. He loved to toy with his players' magic items, apparently, so this is just mean, in my opinion. Now, my favourite Mordenkainen spell is Mordenkainen's Involuntary Wizardry. This 5th level spell causes the target on a failed save to cast a random known spell immediately. It consumed any components on the target that are required, and if the spell would not apply to the situation, or something, the target would instead take a point of damage per level of the spell. So if it was a 5th level spell, they'd take 5 points, 9th level 9, first 1. I can just imagine some 18th level wizard failing a save and casting Fireball on themselves, taking out their rogue or cleric. Such a delightfully evil spell to use against your players. Mordenkainen through the years has moved on from just the home game. He has had a twist with Vecna, cloned the Circle of Eight, assisted the Waffle Crew who named him Ol' Uncle Murdy-Curdy, even featured in Acquisitions Incorporated. His spells transcend editions and settings, and I believe some DMs introduce him as a quest giver NPC over the course of their campaigns, and long may he. It's nice to be able to inject a little bit of Gary Gygax and old D&D into our campaigns. And it's been confirmed by the man himself that the most fun he had playing a character was when he was playing Mordenkainen. And I think that's a testament to Robert Kuntz as well. Now, before we finish, there's 2 things I do want to mention. Big sad sigh. The first being that, sadly, in 1985, when Gary Gygax lost control of TSR, he lost all rights to any characters contained within. And this included Mordenkainen. Thereafter, he was consulted on many aspects of D&D, and that included Mordenkainen and the direction for his ever-evolving story, though he never got the final say. This is likely what leads to some of the contradictions in the official publications for Greyhawk. TSR and WotC, they never did any wrong by Mordenkainen, but who knows how he would have turned out had Gary kept the rights to him. Finally, I want to highlight and commend DMs and players alike for creating characters that can transcend the gap between players, paper, and planes of existence. Heck, Riddick started out as one of Vin Diesel's D&D characters, so who knows what yours might become. Now, the part you've all been waiting for, the fun facts. TSR published a mini-series in Dragon magazine called Living Greyhawk. This series was to inspire readers with more filled out little tidbits and facts about Greyhawk. One of these spoke of an elf who claimed to be Mordenkainen's son. He even claimed to be called Mordenkainen Jr. He would dress in a robe and man a stall titled Mordenkainen's Junction, where he would charge to tell you stories of the Circle of Eight. These were all made up or embellished tales. And of course, he wasn't actually Mordenkainen's son. The Living Greyhawk series was not canonical, though, so sadly this figure doesn't truly exist in the Greyhawk lore either. During dice camera action, Mordenkainen makes an appearance being played by the actor Sam Witwer, who emulated Gary Gygax's voice as an homage for the role. The Circle of Eight, where I could find the names of the players, I have them listed here. Mordenkainen, played by Ernest Gary Gygax. Bigby, a non-player character created and played by Robert Kuntz, the DM for this original game. Dromage was played by Jim Ward, and Dromage is just Jim Ward spelled backwards. Leemund was played by Len Lakofka, who says himself he was never part of the Circle of Eight, instead saying that Leemund there was an imposter whose true name was Gygax. Apparently Gary Gygax made Leemund an NPC at one point. Rari was played by Brian Blue. Tensor was Ernie Gygax, Gary's son, who used the name Ernest as an anagram of sorts to create the name Tensor. And a little sub-fact here, Ernie and Elise, Gary Gygax's eldest son and daughter, were the first 2 to play what we now know as Dungeons & Dragons. How cool is that? I cannot find information on the other members of the Circle of Eight, and if you know any, please comment below. I would love to learn more about the original players. So that's Mordenkainen. Let me know, what's your favourite thing about him? Is there any cool stories I missed? Have you seen the new D&D movie? How do you like the new camera? I look pretty, don't I? Let me know in the comments. As for the D&D movie, I loved it. I recorded a video about it before actually seeing it, so if you want to see how much stuff I got right, check it out there. Or here. Wait. Anyway, okay, take care. Bye.